Aloha, my beautiful people. Hello and welcome to this new episode of Touchful Podcast. This one will be about something that I am so fascinated by, something that I am so passionate about, and that is the topic of curiosity. Living in curiosity, moving through life with curiosity, and stepping into the unknown, because that's what essentially being curious means. So I would like to explore this topic with you today, connect curiosity with living intimately, living so close to the nature of things, and how curiosity can help us to live more freely, to bring more life into life. And I will share some of my stories of me shutting off my curiosity completely and then opening it up again, and what it means for me right now to live in curiosity, to live with the heart that is curious, to live with a mind that is curious. What it means for me as a teacher of Lomi Lomi, to bring curiosity as the main thing that we explore, or one of the main things that we explore on every Lomi Lomi training. So there is a lot that I would like to cover today, a lot of beautiful things. But first, I would like to start with something different. I would like to start with a little bit of an update about Touchful Podcast, because there will be some changes happening to the podcast. And since we are in this together, and that is always my main intention, to feel that this is like a beautiful and small community of people who are in this together, then I want to keep you updated with all the changes. And the change will be about my regularity of posting the episodes. So when I started podcasting back in, 2022, I think, the episodes were very irregular. Sometimes they were once a week, sometimes they were once a month, and that didn't serve me very well back then. So then I committed myself with season 2 of Touchful Podcast. I committed myself to publish one episode a week for 11 weeks in a row, every Monday. And it went beautifully, and it was such a fun season to create. And I needed that so much. I needed that structure. And I did the same with season 3. So the last season. Again, I showed up, I committed myself to come here to the podcast every week and publish it every Monday. And again, it worked beautifully. I so much needed the structure at that time. I needed the proof for myself that I could keep a promise, that I could say that I do something and do it and create something beautiful. So with this season, season 4, season of intimacy, I took the same approach. I showed up at the beginning of the season with a promise that I would make 11 episodes and deliver them to you every Monday. And I feel that this season is so different, that at the beginning of the season, when I told you that I would be talking about intimacy, I said that I had no idea where it would take me, where it would take all of us. But I was, guess what? I was curious. I was curious to see, I was curious to show up and explore this topic of intimacy, intimacy from different angles, to invite you for contemplations, to invite myself for contemplations, and to see where this will take me, where this will take all of us. And one of the surprising changes, something that I completely didn't expect, is that this season is taking me out of regularity. I am literally unable to keep the regularity of posting the episodes every Monday. And when I try to do this, I feel that something in me just shuts off. And this season, for me, is about everything but shutting off. This is a season of intimacy, living so close to life being in touch with life all the time or as often as possible, living with a heart that is open and free and bringing this intimacy into all areas of my life. And in one of the previous episodes, I was talking a lot about intimacy with the divine, being connected to something higher, to something greater, to something deeper. And that is something that I explore a lot in my life right now. I want to show up from this place as often as possible, being connected to something greater, feeling that I am held by something greater. I want to show up in this podcast from this place. I want to show up in my Lomi Lomi trainings from this place. I want to show up for my clients on Lomi sessions from this place. I want to show up for my family and my friends from this place. I want to show up for myself, for my art, from this place of deep, intimate connection to life, to divinity, to beauty, to love. I realized that at this moment of my life, what doesn't support this connection is having a very strict schedule. And I gave myself a couple of weeks to really explore that. And I see it more and more that what once served me, the structure, the promise of showing up every week, bringing to you one episode every week, the episode that would be to my greatest ability and knowledge, and just sharing my heart with you every week on the schedule. What used to work for me so beautifully and was nourishing for me now is stressful for me. It doesn't bring me joy anymore. It shuts me off. It shuts off this connection with love, with beauty, with the divine, with my own heart. When I get stressed, this connection shuts off. So we are, I think, halfway through this season, maybe a little more than halfway, and I would like to change the distribution of the episodes. So I still want to keep them regular, but I don't want to promise anymore that they will be delivered on the schedule every Monday. But what I want to promise is that I will deliver to you the episodes that come from the bottom of my heart, from the deepest and truest place that I can reach in myself at every given moment. I promise you the episodes that will be heart-opening, eye-opening, that will be truthful and authentic and really vibrating with something more than just me saying some words to you. This is what I want more than anything, that you feel when you listen to the episodes, that you feel that there is something more in it, and that you allow this something more to touch you and transform you. Just like I allow this to touch me and transform me. With curiosity, I will be talking a lot about this in today's episode. So that is the change that I would like to inform you about. And I feel so grateful that I can continue practicing podcasting as a spiritual practice. As you know, this is what podcasting is for me. It's the place on the internet when I show up from like such a deep place in myself. Podcasting for me is so different than what I share on social media, what I do on Instagram, what I do on Facebook. This is something so much deeper for me and means so much more for me. And that's why I want to make sure that when I show up for you and when you dedicate your time for me, I want to make sure that this is of highest value. So hence the change, and we will not be on a schedule every Monday, but I want to make sure that we will be regular, because this is extremely important for me to keep this podcast alive, to show up with my heart for you and for myself. So having said that, I would like to take a moment to connect our hearts, to connect our breaths, to feel that we are in this together. So if it feels right and if it feels safe for you, I invite you to close your eyes and put your hand over your heart. If you cannot close your eyes right now, maybe still you can just put your hand over your heart. Or if you cannot do this as well, then maybe you can just bring all the awareness, all the attention, all the intention to your heart. And feel that your breath, your inhale and exhale, comes from your heart and to your heart, as if you are breathing with your heart. Let's have a breath together. Deep inhale. And long, beautiful exhale. And once more, deep inhale through the nose. Beautiful exhale through the mouth. Feeling your heart. And from this place of feeling your heart, I invite you to feel or imagine that your heart is being connected with a thread, with a beautiful golden thread, golden string, or a golden beam. Your heart is connected with my heart, and it is also connected with all the other hearts. Our hearts speak to each other, under the words, beneath the words. Our hearts speak to each other. So I invite you to visualize, imagine, or literally feel the connection between your beautiful heart, precious heart, and my heart. And may this conversation that we are about to have, may it flow from heart to heart. Even if on a surface level it is just me speaking some words and you listening, my deep intention is that we will feel the conversation between our hearts in today's episode. I love you very much. I am happy that you are here, and I think we can dive deeper into today's topic of curiosity. The reason why I'm even bringing this topic right now is because I have quite a lot of Lomi trainings right now. In September and October, I have a lot of individual trainings, so it's just like one-on-one, me and my student, and I also have a beautiful group training coming up in October. And if this is something that you are interested in, you can check the description of the podcast for some details about the training if you want to join. Anyhow, I have lots of Lomi trainings, and when I teach Lomi, this is one of the very first things that I bring up, curiosity, because this is something that makes a great practitioner, not just Lomi, but I think a great practitioner of anything. This is what makes a great human. To be in curiosity, to stay curious, to be open. And this creates the potential for some magic to happen in our lives when we stay curious, when we stay open. But this is also potentially quite a dangerous business. That's why very often I tend to, or I used to do it more, but I still sometimes do it. I choose certainty over curiosity. Because staying curious, being open, is a dangerous business in a sense that it means being really vulnerable, opening up to the unknown. Curiosity, the vibe of curiosity, it literally means that I don't know, I don't assume that I know, but I open up and I am willing to try, I am willing to find out, I am willing to get to know. But first, I need to put myself in this very vulnerable position of I don't know. And it is a beautiful place to put yourself into, but it is also often quite an uncomfortable place. The place of I don't know. That is the place of I don't have control. That is the place of I might feel things that I certainly don't like to feel. Like I might feel stupid, I might feel silly, I might feel incompetent, I might feel like I'm failing. And when I think about myself, I want to bring a little bit of my personal story. When I think about myself, I was, of course, this naturally curious child. I think all children are. I think it's in our nature that we are curious beings. My friend, she has a 2-year-old daughter, and when I visit them, it doesn't happen often, but when I visit them and I look at the little one, she's so infinitely curious about things. She doesn't assume that she knows, but she tries out. How does this taste? What kind of texture is this? What happens if I do this? What happens if I open this? She's infinitely curious, because we all are. Because that's how we learn, through curiosity when we are children. But I kind of have a feeling that for many of us, this natural curiosity ends at some point, or it's just being shut off, limited. Maybe it's through school, maybe it's through upbringing, maybe it's through different things, probably. But a moment comes, and it certainly came in my life, when I felt like being curious was like a dangerous business, like I said. And there is this beautiful quote by Brené Brown that I would like to bring now, because I would like to use some elements of this quote to tell you more about my story. So in her book Rising Strong, Brené Brown says, "Choosing to be curious is choosing to be vulnerable, because it requires us to surrender to uncertainty. It wasn't always a choice. We were born curious. But over time, we learn that curiosity, like vulnerability, can lead to hurt. As a result, we turn to self-protecting, choosing certainty over curiosity, armor over vulnerability, and knowing over learning." I would like to repeat that last sentence, because it just hits home for me so much. Choosing certainty over curiosity, armor over vulnerability, and knowing over learning. And that was definitely me. For a long time, I think since my teenage years, definitely in my 20s, late 20s, that was definitely me. Choosing knowing over learning. Putting an armor of I know, and not allowing myself to go into this place of uncertainty, to the place of vulnerability, because that would mean not knowing. That would mean losing control. That would mean being potentially in some sort of danger of being ridiculed, danger of being criticized, danger of being called stupid or silly. And that was one of my greatest fears. So what I would do is I would put an armor, and I would walk through life with an armor on. And if you have ever seen any kind of like medieval movies or something, and when you see these knights in their armors, how they walk, this is certainly not a comfortable way to walk. Yes, you are protected in the armor, but you are protected from everything, not just from potential danger, but from everything, from potential pleasure and bliss and joy and fun as well. So the last couple of years of my life, it feels to me like a journey back to curiosity. And it definitely started with me thanks to Lomi. When I started practicing Lomi, and even more when I started teaching this practice, I could see how crucial it is to stay curious, to stay open, to assume that I don't know. Because there is a difference between knowing and feeling. And I learned that practicing Lomi. We can even do a little exercise right now. You can just touch your hand. Just stroke your hand very gently, but don't pay much attention to it. And the thing is that your brain knows how it feels. It knows the feeling. You get some physical sensation on your skin, and you kind of almost like you ignore it because your brain knows, oh, it's just me touching my hand. Of course, I know, I understand what's going on. And then I would like you to stroke your hand again, touch your hand very gently again. But this time, bring all the focus there. Assume that you don't know how it feels and you want to find out. Maybe you need to go a little bit slower. Maybe you will just discover that, oh, I'm touching my hand with 3 fingers and I feel this 3 points of contact. Maybe you will notice that your skin is smooth or dry or wrinkled. Maybe you will notice that the touch brings you pleasure, or that it brings some memories or some emotions. It's the same thing that you are doing. You are touching your hand, you are stroking your hand, but you are doing it from a different place. The first one was from the place of knowing. Of course I know how it feels. I can feel it right now. I know how it feels. And the other one was from the place of being infinitely curious. A very beautiful example, another that we can do together, a little exercise, is taking a breath. We do it all the time and we don't even think about it. Thankfully so. We don't need to think about every breath, and that's not the point. We really don't need to think about every breath. But when you start focusing on the breath, you might notice that your mind is trying to deceive you, is trying to convince you that you know how the next breath is going to feel. Like, come on, it's just a breath. We know how breathing feels. Inhale, exhale, what's the big deal? The mindset of knowing. And in the mindset of knowing, there is no chance for you to be surprised. There is no chance for you to learn something. There is no chance for you to discover something. So when you put the mindset of knowing aside for a moment and bring on the mindset of curiosity, then it might turn out that your next breath will feel like a prayer. Remember, in the previous episode, I was talking about my 5 favorite prayers, and number 1 was inhale and exhale. But just the inhale and exhale is not a prayer, is nothing special, unless you make it a prayer, unless you open up to assuming that I don't know how it's going to be. I want to find out. I want to allow myself to be touched, to be moved by this experience, even if it's a simple experience as taking a breath. I want to bring curiosity to it. I remember one of my Lomi teachers, she would always tell us that the easiest way to recognize that you are really doing Lomi and not thinking about doing Lomi, that you are really feeling and not thinking about feeling, is when you get surprised. When you get surprised by the practice, when you get surprised by the stroke. And I can tell you that if you have been doing something for years, like I have been doing Lomi, sometimes it's so easy to get into the mindset of routine. I know how it feels. I have done it hundreds of times, and with this one client I have done it 20 times already. I know how it feels, and then I shut off completely to the magic, to connection to the divine, to connection to life, to being in awe, to living in wonder, to living with open heart. The moment I assume that I know how it's going to be and I fall into the routine, I shut off the door to magic. I shut off the door to life that wants to flow through me with every breath. So if I catch myself when I do Lomi, if I catch myself thinking like this, that, I know how it feels, I'm like, no, Magdalena, you have no idea. This breath that you are going to take, it has never happened before. This stroke that you are going to do on the back of that person has never happened before. Allow yourself to be surprised, to be out of control, to be carried by the river of life, whatever you do. And especially if you do something in a routine way. Maybe you take always the same road to work. Maybe you always eat the same breakfast because you like it. Maybe you make your coffee always in the same way. There are some little things that we do habitually. And there are two ways to bring more life and curiosity into these seemingly ordinary and routine-like things in our lives. The first one is to do something differently. And this is again one of the rules that I have on my Lomi trainings, especially on advanced trainings, but even with beginners, when they learn Lomi, when we practice Lomi, there is a lot of this idea of doing something differently, and I bring it up a lot on every training, because that what takes us from the routine, from the automatic life on an autopilot. It brings us back to life, to living in awe, to wonder, to amazement, to magic, to love, connection, to the river of life that flows through us. So one of the things that you could do is to try to do something a little differently. There's like famous little exercise of brushing your teeth with the other hand that you do normally. Maybe when you are on a coffee break at work, you always sit at the same place. And maybe it's time to sit somewhere else. And another way to bring more curiosity into the seemingly ordinary and routine-like things in your life is to move through life with this intention of curiosity. So if I go for a walk, I always take the same path. And I kind of feel that I know this path by heart right now. I have taken this walk so many times. And it's just so easy to assume that I know it. I have done it hundreds of times. I have been there hundreds of times. And what if you'd assume, you'd play with the idea that you don't know, that you want to get surprised. And then taking a walk, walking the same path, suddenly it might bring you some little surprise, a little moment of joy, a little moment of like, oh, there is something here. I haven't seen that before. Oh, there is this cloud. There's this tree, or maybe you will see a little side path that you have never seen before, because you are so much in your mindset of knowing. I know what I'm doing. And it's not about, doing it all the time and living it like this all the time, but about bringing more of curiosity into your life. Not 24/7, but bringing more of it whenever you can. Assuming that I don't know, allowing myself to be surprised, to be touched, to be moved, to be transformed, because this is what life wants to offer us at every moment, every second, every millisecond. Life comes to you through your senses. Life comes to you and it wants to play with you. It wants to touch you. It wants to transform you. It wants to open you up for something. But when we constantly assume that we know, then, like I said, to me, it feels like shutting off the door to magic. And at the same time, like I said, assuming that I don't know, that I might, oh God forbid, that I might be wrong, that maybe I was wrong about something. Can you imagine how many different emotions it can bring to you? Just this idea that maybe I was wrong about something. To me, it was the most dreadful thing. This idea that I might have been wrong and now I have to admit it. So like I said, I would rather put the armor and I would choose certainty over curiosity and knowing over learning, like Brené Brown said. And I missed out on so many things in my life because of that. Because I didn't want to try new things. I didn't want to try something that I haven't tried before because I was afraid to be silly, to be not good at it, to be laughed at. So I would constantly and repetitively say no to life. Life would come to me with all kinds of different offers and ideas. It would come to me through people with some new ideas, propositions, offers, openings. And my habitual response was no. No, I don't want that. No. No, 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 no. Constantly closing the door. And life always brings you a yes. There is always a yes. So life constantly comes with more offerings to you. Even if you constantly, like I, would be saying no, 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 fine. There will be more, there will be more, there will be more. But I missed out on so much in my life out of fear of being vulnerable. Because being in curiosity means being vulnerable. Because it means that I don't know, which means that I am uncertain, which means that I am out of control, which means that everything can happen. And for some reason, we often tend to assume that the worst things are going to happen. But very often, the best things are going to happen. The moments when I stayed curious, when I stayed open, these were the moments of the greatest miracles of my life. These were the moments when such coincidences happened and such synchronicities that my heart and my mind were just blown away. Things that I could never possibly imagine happening. They do happen when we stay curious. In fact, they do happen all the time. But when we are constantly in the knowing, I know what to expect, then of course you will get what you expect. When you are in the mindset of, I know how it's going to be, this is my expectation, then most likely, yes, you will get what you expect. Versus when I allow myself, sometimes really with shaky knees and just feeling like I'm just going to lose my life in a moment, even if it's completely not dangerous situation. But if I allow myself to be curious, to assume that I don't know, then definitely I will undergo some transformation. I somehow really like this comparison to opening and closing doors. That curiosity is like opening doors to life, bringing life and light into you, allowing life to move you and to transform you, to lift you up, versus the mindset of, I know, so the door is closed. The life doesn't flow, the magic doesn't flow. And yes, I am definitely safe. But is it really what life is about? Is it really what you want, to be safe? There's this beautiful saying, a beautiful proverb that a ship is safe in the harbor. But this is not what ships are built for. They are not built to stay in the harbor. And right now, when I was talking about the ships, a story came to me. I think it's the last thing that I would like to share with you today. And it's the story of the people of ancient Polynesia, which is this region of the globe with this like hundreds of thousands of islands, bigger and smaller. And the story of Polynesian navigators who were sailing between these islands, sailing to the unknown lands, without knowing for sure that there is an island somewhere. They didn't know that. They didn't have a map because nobody was ever there before. So they didn't have the knowing from the mind that, okay, if we go here, there's definitely gonna be an island there. But still, they would build their canoes and they would sail into the unknown, kind of like trusting and knowing from a deeper knowing than the mind that there is something there. There must be something there, and I want to go there with open heart, with trust, with curiosity that there is an island there. And again, think, where would we be as humans if we didn't have curiosity? This is our natural drive. What is behind that hill? What is on the other side of the ocean? What is on the other end of the rainbow? We have it naturally. We don't need to do anything to have curiosity. We naturally have it. All we need to do is to open the door and allow ourselves to practice this curiosity, the mindset of curiosity, curious mind and curious heart as often as possible. Because I feel that curiosity, because it's such a natural thing for us as humans, it is so nurturing. It's this feeling when you can finally take the armor off and live, assuming that I don't know, I don't need to know. Maybe like me, you are like me and you believe that there is something greater holding us. So I can just rest in my life, move with curiosity, knowing and trusting that I am held by something greater than me. By something that is made of love. So I can just relax and move with curiosity through life. Will I always be safe? No. Again, when I come back to this 2-year-old daughter of my friend, she's so curious, and sometimes she falls, sometimes she cuts herself, sometimes she bumps her head, sometimes she cries, sometimes it hurts. But this doesn't stop her from wanting to explore the world. So I am not going to promise you that living with curious heart and curious mind, that it's going to be easy and you will never cut yourself or bump your head or fall. Probably you will. Maybe you'll even get lost. But again, when I think about that, when I think about all the dangers of living with curious heart and living with curious mind, when I think about all the dangers and something in me is like, okay, better not do it, then I'm like, okay, but what's the alternative? What's the alternative? To be the ship who spends all the time in a harbor just to be safe, or to be a ship that leaves the harbor because that's what ships are made for. And yes, sometimes there are tragedies and ships sink, but again, do I want to be the ship who is all the time in a harbor and getting rusty and bitter and kind of like slowly dying inside? Or do I want to embrace my nature, the nature of curiosity, choose curiosity over certainty, vulnerability over armor, learning over knowing? I'm leaving you and myself with this contemplation for today. It's not that I live like this all the time. I need a lot of security in my life, and I build my life a lot around that. Peace and quiet and security. But again, it's not about what we do, but with what intention. Can I bring more curiosity into my daily life? It doesn't mean that suddenly you need to become a daredevil or, sell your house and go for a trip around the world. I mean, you can if you want to, but that's definitely not the case. This is not what being curious is about. It's not about making these big daredevil moves. That is just being reckless. But between being like completely immobile and never leaving the harbor and being completely reckless and leaving the harbor in the greatest storm, somewhere there is a sweet spot for all of us. And this is what I wish for myself. This is what I wish for you. This is what I wish for the world. More curiosity. And you know what? There is actually one more thing that I want to say. This is exactly how this podcast is going to look right now, because I just get channeled like more and more. Okay, and then there is this, and then there is this. So I'm just sitting here with open heart and just like channeling more and more. So there is one more thing that I want to say. And that is adapting this mindset of curiosity and curious heart to relationships with people, instead of going into judgment, going into the assumption that I know something about that person, I know who they are. Just staying curious and staying open. And oh my God, I am so guilty of this. I really want to make a confession here that I am so guilty of this. That sometimes I see somebody, I see just how they look. I never talk to that person, but I just see how they look. And I assume something about that person just based on how they look. I'm like, okay, they are probably some crazy hippie-dippy. And then I start talking to that person, and then it turns out that they are like the most deep and insightful, beautiful, inspiring, grounded human being that I ever met. And then I always feel so embarrassed and so ashamed of myself. Like, I did that again. I assumed that I knew. And then it turns out that I have no idea. We have no idea. How would it be to apply more of curiosity into your relationships? Both with people that you already know. Maybe there is somebody that you know for 20 years. And we somehow assume that, once a friend, forever a friend. We just like met 20 years ago, we are good. And what if I could apply this mindset of curiosity to my long-term relationships? I recently practiced this a lot with my parents. They are one of the very few people who I have known my whole life. So it's so easy to assume that I know who they are. But if instead of that, I allow myself to be a little bit more curious and actually see them as humans and not just as my parents, then completely new levels of relationship between me and my parents opened up. So that is one thing for you to practice. And for myself, first of all, I'm speaking to myself, for us to practice curiosity in these long-term relationships. But also with new people, with somebody who maybe you see for the first time, or you see how they are dressed, or you know just one little fact about them, so you, based on that fact, you assume everything about them. And by the way, this is a normal function of our brain. This is not something that we can entirely stop. This is how our brain works. This is how our brain is designed, our mind, to operate. So it's not that we can completely stop it, but maybe become a little bit more aware of that and mindful at how often I just see somebody, how they are dressed, or based on one sentence that they wrote on their Facebook wall, I create a whole story around that. And one of the most heart-opening and conversation-opening questions that evoke curiosity instead of judgment, not even a question, a sentence. The sentence is, tell me more. I'd like to know more. when somebody shares something and my first immediate reaction is to shut off, and I'll be like, oh my God, how can they even think like this? Instead of that, can I just take a breath, keep my heart open, and apply the curious heart? Tell me more. I'd like to know more. And that is, for me personally, super difficult. But again, it is rewarding. It takes me from knowing to learning. It takes me from the predictable and the obvious, which is also small and limiting. It takes me to the open sea. It takes me to getting to know myself better, because this is ultimately what curiosity does for us. We get to know ourselves better. When I do something differently, when I pay attention to something that I haven't paid attention to before, when I come to another person with a curious heart instead of closed heart, when I risk to be laughed at or ridiculed because I do something for the first time, all this expands me as a person. And isn't it what we are here for? To expand, to grow, to explore, to evoke consciousness in ourselves. And I feel that now I am done. Wow. I feel that I need to listen to this episode. I will when I will be editing it. That is the fun part, even though I don't like editing, but then I have a chance to listen again to what I was saying. And sometimes I'm like, wow, that's a good thing. So thank you so much for today. It feels like a blessing to be able to do this podcast like this in a way that I do, and knowing that there are few people there on the other side who listen to this. And I hope that you found something precious for yourself in today's episode. I put my hand over my heart. I take a breath to your heart. And thank you for you. And thank you for me. Thank you for this moment. Thank you for life. Thank you for curiosity and vulnerability. And I will talk to you soon. Aloha and bye-bye.